Okay,
Hey,
I can see you all. Amazing. So what will happen is I'm going to disappear into the Zoomiverse. I've set a timer on my watch. I'll watch the chat and the Q&A. If there's anything like that, we can come back to it at the end. So David, I pass it over to your faithful hands to introduce everybody that you got here.
nice. Hi, everybody. I'm David Ferris, live from my kitchen in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Great to be here. So I work at Jobber, and I also do events as Product Edmonton, so workshops and training and lots of product management stuff. Yeah, I guess I'll let the guests introduce themselves because that's always a lot better. So maybe we'll go through and everybody can say a little bit about themselves and who they are and where they're from and what they do.
I'll start. Hi, everyone. I'm Robert Bob Evans. I'm a product manager at Intuit, and I work on our conversational user interface and natural language understanding platform teams, which is a very long and very fancy way of saying I help our Intuit customers have great voice and text conversational experiences with our products, whether that's getting self-help or trying to get work done. And I'm really thrilled to be here. Thanks.
Awesome. I can go next. My name is Allie. I'm the product management lead at 7 Shifts. So we are a restaurant scheduling company. And my area of focus is a lot easier to say than Bob's. I work on our scheduling area, as well as a tasks app that we have as an add-on. So great to be here. And hello, people that I can't see, but fun.
Everyone, Paul Sade, product management lead at iQmetrix. We're a retail management solutions for the wireless. So you think when you're going in to buy a cell phone in places, we have clients in Canada and the US, although our larger client is the US. Also helped co-found Product BC and am an expert in helping develop new ISO specs for artificial intelligence for both in Canada and the US. Great to be here.
Awesome. So yeah, we have a really wide range of people from all across Canada. Maybe not all across Canada, all across like Vancouver to Saskatchewan, which is great. So I'm going to dive right into this. So I know a lot of the people in the audience are people that are just starting out, or they have a smaller team, or they're maybe in those earlier stages. So one of the most important questions, I guess, is for a smaller company or a newer company or a company that maybe doesn't have a dedicated product manager. How do you actually figure out if you're building the right thing or the right things? And anyone can just like jump in and riff off that.
Sure, I can jump in.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Allie.
I think it's a really hard problem to solve, and it's really hard at any stage of the customer or the life cycle, I guess, of a company, is how do you figure out when you've achieved product market fit and how do you get there? Really, I think some of the key factors there are making sure that you're defining your problem really strongly and defining who your customer is, and then just validating all those assumptions that you have. So maybe you had this great idea of a thing that you want to build, but before you get started on that, it's about meeting with a lot of people, asking a lot of questions, maybe building a landing page or starting with an open beta and just figuring out if you can, if the thing that you think is a great idea is actually appealing to those people that you want your customers to be. One of the big things that I've found working in product is the kind of the differentiation that you get to know from customers that are like, oh yeah, that sounds cool, like that could be valuable to me, or just sort of that supportive tone that you can get versus when you're sort of getting closer to something valuable, people start to ask like, oh, when can I have this? And how much is this? How can I sign up? And there's a little bit more urgency to those questions when you're getting close to what the right thing might be.
Yeah, I'll plus one, Allie. Like I think the kind of the mechanics and the best practices of product development are like they're largely consistent regardless of where you are. Like you still need to be making sure that you're solving the problem, understanding your audience, starting scrappy, iterating on ideas. The resources that you have allocated to you and the time that you're able to spend is obviously going to be the determining factor, depending on like the size of what you're doing. So, I mean, that is where another like basic tenet of product development kind of comes into play, which is start scrappy. Like Ali was saying, like that, your validation might come in the form of a landing page. You might have access to talking to 10 people rather than 10,000 people at the start. But you still need to be kind of like doing these things as you as your product develops, as your company grows, you're going to have the opportunity to kind of like scale up, and be a little more wider reaching in terms of how you're answering the question of whether you're solving the problem. But you always need to be doing it in some way at some scale, no matter what you are or where you're doing, whether you're like single founder just exploring an idea, or you've grown to 10 people, and you actually have product specialization. You still need to do the work.
And to add on that, I guess looking at building the right thing, depending on the size of the company, I mean, if you're just literally starting out, what's your runway look like in terms of cash reserves? How long can you hang on? Do you have additional income streams because you're hopping into healthcare? That could take a little bit longer to, develop and launch something. But to, I guess, just basically kind of say what Ali had said already with, having enthusiasm for your product. I know myself way early on, if people seem to go, oh, that could be, take that as, oh, they're maybe interested. But if they're really asking questions like you'd already mentioned, when can I get this? Or they're tackling you and shoving money in your pockets, maybe not during COVID, that'd be bad, to pay for this before you leave, then you really know you're onto something. It's not just like, sometimes people are just polite. I mean, we're in Canada here, so you really need to see that there is that enthusiasm. And yeah, as mentioned already, is just going out chatting with customers. If you have domain knowledge and you can see that there is this, hey, I could shorten the amount of time it takes somebody to do something, and you know how much their wage is, and you can see how this could fit in. And ideally, if the person who has that pain is also the buyer and has budget to purchase your product, that's also helpful. So yeah, I'd say just validating, how that actually integrated into their business. Because sometimes, even if you look at, like, say, AI or machine learning solutions, sometimes companies aren't able to ingest those as easily. So you have to look at, once I build this magical product, whatever it is, how easily will this be, brought on by whatever company you're trying to sell it to.
Yeah, so lots of like really good themes there. The one I'm getting a lot is like making sure the problem is really clearly articulated and really compelling. It's actually really easy to work on a mediocre problem. Like it's if you ever seen like American Idol, where there's someone who's a terrible singer, and it's like, how did they get on American Idol while being a terrible singer? It's because people were polite. And it happens with product all the time. I see all these people with new products, and they're the friends and family and random people are like, well, I wouldn't use it, but I could see this being useful. And that's sort of the kiss of death, because at the end of the day, you need to like really clearly articulate a really compelling problem, and then what the winning product is given that product, and rally people around it and build it. And if at the very fundamental level you don't have a compelling problem, you're not going to have a compelling product. So that's all really good advice. Okay, question 2.
Yeah. I was
go
just going to
for it.
plus one to add to that, is that, like, sometimes there's a chasm between what people say they're going to do or what they want to do and what they actually do. And that is like the biggest gap to look at, because like someone saying that they want something isn't validation.
Right.
I think it's displaying it in some way where there's actually a behavioral change. Like that is like the best way to actually determine whether you're solving a problem, is where you're actually changing behavior.
Yeah, and solving a problem, like it might be a problem that's worth solving, but it might not be a valuable problem. Like there might be some minor convenience everybody wants, but people aren't necessarily willing to pay for, so it doesn't really work. Like you really want to validate the business model on top of that problem as well. But I guess either way, validating that there's a real valuable problem is something that some people skip. Or I guess they probably think they're doing it, but yeah, really doubling down on that's super important. And maybe if we could keep talking about sort of like common mistakes that happen a lot with like newer companies. Given like newer companies that are getting started, they have new products, they're trying to get that fit, they're trying to get that traction, trying to validate things. What are some of the really common mistakes that people can make? And hopefully we can save a few people from making those common mistakes.
Sure, I can start this time. Maybe so I think one can be people just falling in love with the technology and then just chasing that until it's done, and maybe losing sight of the customer. Obviously, we've already touched on how it's important to validate that part, but just chasing the technology can be, a time sink, although it can be maybe fun, but it might not materialize into an actual business.
I would maybe actually even zoom out on that. It's not even necessarily falling in love with the technology, falling in love with your solution. and falling in love with the way that you want to do things and your vision. I think having a compelling vision is definitely an important like facet of product development, but at the same time, you should be falling in love with the problem you want to solve, not the solution. There are a lot of different ways to solve a problem, but if you're fixated on one solution, you are a very specific hammer looking for a very specific nail, and you know sometimes that works, and uh, sometimes that will pay off. But I mean, most of the time, I think the kind of the graveyard of failed products and companies is because they were fixated on the one way that they wanted to do a thing, when there was no actual market for it. It wasn't solving the problem, or it didn't scale. Like there's any number of reasons why a solution won't work, um, and you need to be able to kind of keep flexible and be able to um, work the problem more than you're necessarily going to just kind of keep consistent with your one solution.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And especially the piece about kind of zooming out. I think it's really easy, again, for a company that's in any stage of life that you're sort of feeling really involved in a problem and really hands-on and really like doing the thing. But it's important to take that step back and take another look at your problem that you're trying to solve. And like, am I just following this sort of stream of activities because this is the flow that I want, or am I actually getting to the place that I want to get to in this vision that I've set out for myself?
Awesome. So next question. So for a company that doesn't have a dedicated product manager, whether they're like, if you're starting a company yourself, you have to do the work. But as the company starts to grow, who should be doing that work, the product management work?
I'll start on that, and this is maybe more of my own opinion, so individual mileage would vary. But I mean, like at the start, when your company's just nascent, like when the product is the company and the company is the product, it is the founder who is maintaining that vision, understanding the problem, and is guiding the philosophy on how you're going to solve that problem. And when that is kind of codified into a culture that can be maintained, like at some point bringing in a person who you trust to take over the mechanics of building the product while the founder is able to build the company, is the right switch off point. I can't point to a rubric that says at X amount of revenue or X amount of runway, like that's the point to switch off. I think that might be difficult to. I think it's in the DNA of whatever specific company it is, but kind of the long and short of it is the founder sets the tone for that. Ultimately, everyone on the team should be responsible for and have bought into the vision and be responsible for the product. Like that should be a mentality that everyone has. But I think that's led by the founder until specialization can happen.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that largely, that founder is, as you said, sort of the company is the product and the product is the baby of the founder, and the whole thing sort of is just this little ball that all kind of rolls together. At the same time, I think that product, because it's such a cross-functional role, there's kind of pieces of it that before product exists are going to be performed by a lot of different people in the company. There's someone that's probably responsible for supporting and working with your customers. Maybe there's a sales piece. Maybe there's someone who's looking at the market and how we differentiate. There's probably somebody scoping your problems and figuring out what exactly it is that you need to build. And one day there's all those pieces that are coming together, probably with a product manager. But at the beginning, it might be a bunch of different people that are sort of in a room together trying to figure things out.
Yeah, I'd say as well, and vein is, I guess, if I look at how I do like customer discovery now, it's myself as well as tech lead, as well as someone from design chatting with the clients. So if you're really small and you're just at the concept stage and you're trying to figure out, it's probably good if there's a few of you, probably to have everybody meeting with the clients, because the meetings probably aren't happening that frequently. If they're happening all the time, then at least getting them in on some of those meetings to understand and make sure everybody's aligned as to what that challenge is good. And then as you're growing, well, whoever's really good at being able to come up with, unbiased information and ask the right questions should be the person. Typically it's kind of, the initial founder that's doing that. But basically whoever's the best at extracting the right information in an unbiased way from potential clients should be that person.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Like getting as many people in the company, it's even in for like not in the early stages, like getting them to talk to the users as much as possible is important. Because if you've done a really good job of articulating the problem, you know, like the best solutions don't come from product managers. They're going to come from designers. They're going to come from engineers. You know, like your job is really to like make that problem crystal clear and then get them as knowledgeable as possible about the, you know, what's actually happening so they can come up with the best solutions. So that's awesome. For companies as they grow, like when should they actually get a product manager? And this is a hard question because I think it's easy to tell when it's too late. Because I talk to some companies and they'll be like 80-person company and there'll be one person who randomly is doing the work and they're completely overwhelmed. But when is it actually the right time to get a product manager? How can, because you probably want to get one a little bit before you need one. So like how can founders actually start to like think about those things?
Yeah, it's a big depends, as all things in product tend to be, but I think some of the indicators are there's sort of that growing feeling that someone needs to care about this specifically. Probably the complexity of the business is growing. Probably you've already like launched that first product that was your thing, and there's a little bit of, okay, where do we go now? What's our next step? And maybe that founder is now busy with some other things that are reducing capacity. So things like, oh, now we need to hire more people, or I need more funding. I got to figure this out. Maybe I'm defining a vision or a culture. And that's, again, like taking up more time that I'm not able to put the effort in that I need to have a really good product strategy and a really good product. And at that point, when it's sort of maybe starting to take a little bit of a backseat, that's maybe, as you said, like too far into it, but it's certainly a red flag that there's somebody needs to be coming in to own that area of the company.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I was actually brought on to a startup as the kind of first product manager hire when that company actually was capable of delivering, and there was a lot of there was more velocity to delivering than there was capability of managing that growth, where it was kind of CEO founder managed at that point, up to that point. But you know, when you hire 2 engineers and you're actually like capably building something and things are happening, but at the same time you're still trying to build a product, like that's about the point where, you know, if you don't focus on that and decisions are just going to be made without product shepherding and product growth, you know, it's going to get a little wobbly. So if you feel that you're not able to kind of manage that at the same time that you're managing a million other things, like that's when a product manager comes in and should be actually an accelerator on that. So right, instead of spending time, you know, kind of going like this, if you can focus execution so it's being more efficiently used, then realistically, like that is the point where a product manager actually has value, because they can help focus that.
Yeah, earlier on, I was in a startup as well, and it seems like a typical thing that happens is, you know, the founder just gets too busy, and they finally realize that they probably should have hired someone maybe, you know, 6 months or a year ago, but now they really hit capacity, so now they want to be bringing someone in, and depending on the role, I mean, it might be more of sort of managing the backlog with some, you know, future visioning, or it might be more of the future visioning piece, but depending on the size of the company, it seems like the founder would be taking on sometimes more of that. Here's where, you know, the direction we're going, until, you know, that person can, you know, prove their chops and be able to help more of that. But yeah, it seems like it's usually when it's people have been brought on, it's usually a little bit late. So if people are seeing that they're starting to hit their bandwidth and that probably isn't going to change, that probably thinking about getting someone in sooner can be helpful. Then also understanding, you know, what are those skills you're looking for? Are you looking for someone to help with a bit more of that vision? Where is it they see their role? How are they going to divide this with that person? Do they just want, you know, a product owner who is solid at helping manage the backlog? So, you know, defining what they see their role as being, as well as this new hire's role, would be, I guess, helpful.
Nice. And one of the problems I think companies have a lot if they're hiring their first PM or if they're doing the work themselves is just like getting good at it and getting the skills. Like that's really challenging because like most product managers, you ideally want someone who's learned through trial and error, like erring somewhere else versus in your product. But for somebody who's starting to do the work themselves or hiring somebody, how do you actually give them the skill development or yourself the skill development to actually get good at this stuff, especially in the early stages that are really do or die?
Sure. Okay, I can go. I guess, well, there's lots of online training. Obviously, attending events like this, there are workshops you can be going to and ensure you're continuing your own development. I'm sure that, Ellie and Bob can, and yourself there as well, David, can, mention all the things that you've done for training and personal development through even, this year. But I think it's a continuous development process and just, networking with people in the community, finding out what they have done that's helpful. Reading as well, but yeah, ensuring that they're continually developing themselves it's an ongoing, never-ending process.
Yeah, I mean, you're making the presumption that I consider myself still good at what I do, when I'm not just plagued by self-doubt and imposter syndrome. And I'll just plus one, Paul. Like I learned what I learned through. There's a lot of extant material out there about what good product development is, that like and more every day. I would put the plus one in for, if you're in Edmonton, go out to events, be part of the community. I learn best when I have access to a mentor, and kind of learn vicariously through someone else's mistakes, is definitely helpful. Um, and I think basically in most communities there should be something that is akin to a product group. So becoming part of the community is super helpful, even if you just need to like ping ideas off someone or vent about something that didn't go well. Like it's helpful when there's other people to commiserate with.
Yeah, echo all of the, needing to be learning in this area and kind of growing within your career, and whether that's through events or mentors or whatever that might look like. Tons of options available. I don't remember who said kind of the idea on a bit of a different note of making sure that when you are bringing that person on, you're really trying to define a little bit what you're looking for from that person, as far as their responsibilities and what they're bringing to the organization. And that as a founder or as whoever maybe is filling that product role at the time, that you're kind of willing to give them or to work with them on the things that you are hoping that they deliver. So being able to share that vision and share the roadmap a little bit and kind of what it is that that they need to deliver, giving them a little bit of space to be able to do that and grow in the role. Obviously, it's great to have somebody that has experience and is gonna be able to take it on and really hold it well, but they need a little bit of space to be able to do that as well.
Yeah, I think defining the role is really important because ultimately, we all work at startups and every job like already sounds made up. Like honestly, like every job title is absurd. So like when somebody comes on as a product manager and they haven't done it before and it's a small company, like really articulating like are they helping define the vision for what everything is that the product is and does? Are they defining the problem? Or are they managing a backlog and you have a very clear idea of what you want? Like setting those expectations is really important because product management can be almost anything really. It can be, a lot of like, they could be doing a lot of research. They could be doing a lot of like scoping. They could be doing like all sorts of different things. So being really clear on what you actually need is important. And also if you give them enough information and context, they might help you find out what you need from the product side. Another thing to plus one that I heard is like connecting with your local communities. Almost every city has a product community. Definitely connect with them because you'll literally have access to just a bunch of product managers. And I've seen so many different Slack communities and product communities in different cities, and they're always welcome people coming in and saying like, I have this problem, what would you do? And suddenly you have like 10 people, 20 people, like all sorts of opinions, and it'll really help you, if not give you the answer, know exactly what you should be looking up to find the answer. So I definitely plus one that as well.
Yeah, and I want to just jump back like half a step to this idea of sort of defining that role, because I think the really maybe obvious thing to a lot of people would be that it's going to change a lot. Like one of the great things about working in a startup is that the needs are always shifting. There's like people that are filling different roles on different days, and that's awesome and a really big benefit of working in the space. So whether you're having that conversation every like month or every 6 months, it doesn't super matter as long as you're, you know, kind of trying to have that conversation of what am I doing, what are you doing, and allowing that to be flexible and kind of growing as the company changes and its needs change as well.
I always kind of define product management and a quality of a lot of product managers I met is that they don't exist as like solids. They exist as gases, and they'll expand to fill the container that they're put in. So that would mean that like product managers often try to be program managers, project managers, researchers, and at some point, yeah, they may need to be all those things, but take time to define the state of the container or the size of the container, because you'll get more out of the person that you hire to do a thing, and it also is good for them to be able to focus and specialize and be able to prioritize what matters.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like the expanding metaphor, and it is interesting because like the role does change within a company as it grows. Like the company, like I work at Jobber, and originally, like when I was like a product manager and there was no others, I had no idea what I was doing, and I still have no idea what I'm doing. But now there's like 10 product managers, and it's like a lot more specific what you do. Like the role really changes as a company grows. I guess so another question, like for like somebody who's doing it themselves and they're just starting out, what are the skills that they should be focusing on first, I guess, you know, the things that are most important for those early stages?
Just for product managers kind of in general?
Yeah, like or a founder who's doing the product management work.
I mean, I think one of the primary skills is, you know, being able to drill down and ask why, and really get to the root of the problem, and not just the superficial problem that seems to be presenting itself. Like if you do nothing else in product management, that is the muscle that you should develop, is being able to kind of zoom past the gloss or the bullshit or the kind of the things that you know appear on the surface, and being able to, you know, do the 5 whys exercise, of just kind of like following that framework to making sure that you're understanding like what it is that you're trying to solve, or really when you go to talk to your customers, understanding what they say when they tell you something, because most of the time the first thing that they say isn't actually the thing that you need to hear. It's the thing that's kind of like 3 clicks down. So it's the kind of like persistent inquisitiveness is generally the first thing that I suggest people get comfortable with doing. And if you're not comfortable in guiding a conversation like with a stranger, which I understand and I wasn't good at the start, that is a really important skill set to develop, because you'll use that throughout your entire career.
Yeah, I think I echo that, especially kind of thinking back to when I first started in product, and it can feel really like you should know the answers, and getting to that 4th or 5th why is very like, well, I mean, I don't want to be wasting this person's time. It seems like it's probably they mean this, like it feels obvious, kind of questions like that might be happening in the back of your head. But if you kind of like just sit in that discomfort and get used to it a little bit, you can really learn some interesting things that you might not have ever thought to prod into it, until you get to that 5th why and you're like, oh God, I'm going to do it one more time. And then that's sometimes where the really cool findings come out.
Yeah, I like focusing on the 5 whys, like going deeper, because I think like honestly, like it's so easy to interview people and customers, and it's all surface level. And if the answers, like essentially you're looking to create value that doesn't exist by solving these problems. Like if the information was available on the surface level, someone else would already be doing it. You need to be able to actually get that information, which is something that sounds obvious, but like a lot of people struggle with doing that.
Yeah, like with the 5 whys, I tend to be are going deeper. Maybe there are some questions you maybe shouldn't ask, but then, many are fair game. And if people really don't want to answer, they'll mention that. So being able to go and meander on those right paths is good. So yeah, just getting comfortable with that. So the more times you do it, the easier it'll get. If you aren't used to doing this, I mean, the first one's awkward, second one's maybe equally awkward, but eventually it'll become less awkward. So the more you do it, the better you'll get. So just keep on getting out there and doing it would be good.
Yeah, I guess in talking to lots of customers as well. Like I was talking with someone this morning, and they're like trying to figure out ways to talk to lots of customers. Like there's a Reddit group for everything. There's a Facebook group for everything. Go out and find people and just like practice talking to them. You're not going to end up with a worse product if you talk to too many people. And be creative. Like I have a coworker who needed to talk to a bunch of like contractors, so we just would like go hang out in the Home Depot parking lot. And that's great. You can talk to all sorts of customers until the staff come out and they tell you to leave. So like, there's always really good solutions for that. Yeah, I feel like other people had some other stuff they wanted to add there.
I might add another good skill set is being able to identify an MVP and what a minimal viable product is. I mean, your MVP is your hypothesis that you're basing on your research. You should be able to determine what is important to include in a scrappy experiment to be able to validate your hypothesis and what you don't. Bless you. The skateboard, bicycle, car analogy really holds. Being able to differentiate a skateboard and a car is sometimes challenging. But I mean, with time and with experience and an analytical eye, it does get easier. But just making sure that you're not overburdening your experiments and putting in too many variables when you don't need to measure them, and focusing on what the variables are you are trying to measure and what you do need to validate.
Yeah, I would really +1 that idea of, okay, what's our hypothesis and how do we know if we've actually achieved it or not? It's really easy to kind of set out and say, okay, well, let's try this and we'll see if something happens. And if you don't kind of walk into it with the idea of, okay, what are the some things that we're actually looking for? You can come out the other side of that experiment and just go, okay, well, that was a lot of hours that we put in. So it's important to try to be really diligent with yourself of setting up those lines a little bit.
Yeah, having those lines is so important, because one thing I see a lot is like people approach things kind of like the old like Texas sharpshooter, where they basically like will shoot at the side of a barn a bunch of times, and then they'll go up and they'll draw a target afterwards where they got nailed it. And it sounds like absurd, but that's actually how a lot of people do their experimentation and hypothesis testing, is just kind of like winging it like that. So it's really important to have really clear success metrics, and yeah, change what the definition of an MVP is, because a lot of people say like an MVP is like the first product, the earliest product you can bring to market, but it's literally like, what is the minimal amount of work you can do to learn? And if you've really clearly identified your assumptions ahead of time and you actually have that plan, it could be super effective. But if not, it's just like a car just spinning the tire on the ice, and you won't really get anywhere.
Yeah, I think looking at products in terms of what is that vertical slice of value you can do for the MVP versus like, if you're building some giant piece of functionality and maybe building stuff horizontally and nothing's going to get out the door for a year. I mean, that's a little more challenging. So what's the smallest value you can put in someone's hands that they'll actually, get some kind of benefit from it, and figuring that out with the client and the tech team. You don't need to, overdo things to start, because, if it does fail, you might need to pivot. So not burning a bunch of your time on things is helpful. So yeah, basically just echoing what's already been said.
Awesome. And we have a question. This is I think more of a question for Ali. But Joel asks, is there a product community group in Regina or Saskatoon? And I've met lots of really great product people from Saskatchewan. Where do they hang out?
Yeah, as far as a specific, like, I know there's obviously Product Edmonton and Product Calgary. To my knowledge, and I hope I'm not missing something when I say I don't think that we have that sort of exact box, but some of the places that I get the most learnings and kind of find my people are Interface, which is a product and Yeah, we can work on that. Product and design group. And then another one is collabs. They host a lot of great events that are obviously now looking a little bit different, but it's a good place to line up with other people in the community as well. I'm sure
Yeah,
there's
on the
others that
prairies,
I'm not mentioning, so I'm sorry, but those are the two that come to mind for me.
yeah, that interface group's really good. And it's like the exact kind of Slack group where you could just like bounce ideas off people, which is really, really valuable. And I know like, I guess it's like pretty far away still, but like Winnipeg has like, there's like a product Winnipeg group spooling up, and I think they have their first event in October. Um, yeah, but yeah, anytime you can connect with other product people, that's great, because no matter what city you're in, there's going to be people of a company about your size. There's going to be companies like a 7Shift or Vendasta, you know, like there's all this space, you know, of different size companies, of people that have, you know, different problems that you can learn from, you know, how to solve your current problems, and as well as giving you a heads up of like what the next problems you're probably going to hit. So I have another question. Are there any tips and tricks for product discovery? So like just generally like the defining what the product should be and the problem should be. What are some techniques that are really good for people that are just starting out? I know one that was mentioned earlier was like making a landing page, you know, maybe expanding on that, or other techniques that are really, really useful.
Yeah, I do like that dummy page approach. I mean, if you see that, you know, people are clicking on it, wanting to buy stuff, depending on how you're acquiring traffic, that's a group. I mean, something that earlier on when we were exploring one of our ideas, it was for something with depreciation report. So we were going to have this lovely software, which we, prior to building anything, we essentially just had a PDF. Here's something that, you know, the software could spit out. So you don't need all the software to do it. That's something you can do by hand. You can get something done and have something in one's hands to do it. You don't need all the fancy stuff in the back end. So can you split up your product like that? Can you show maybe what that output is without doing, you know, all this optimization to get things done faster? So maybe it's a little more laborious and not scalable to start. It's okay to do things that aren't scalable earlier on until you've, you know, validated things, and then you realize that it's worthwhile, you know, actually building something that is scalable.
Yeah, on a similar note, another kind of strategy or method that I've used to go on this adventure is basically if you can run something through email. Maybe you have a product or an idea that makes a lot of sense as an interface and you see this like beautiful vision for it, but if you can really achieve the same value from, like, as we've kind of talked about, doing the unscalable stuff in the beginning of maybe you're, you know, manually sending out whatever that information might be or whatever that value might be that you think you can deliver in another way, like, yeah, use landing pages, use emails, make people sign up for a fake beta. Like you've got some options in the beginning for sure.
Yeah, it just kind of generally, I'm a big proponent of prototyping, and prototyping early and often. So I think like actually landing page and emails, like those are all examples of prototype. Anything where you can get someone to demonstrate committing to a behavior with an intent, I think is probably the best validation signal you can do. So however you want to do that, like there's also like a bunch of like there's a bunch of like scrappy prototyping tools where you can build something together. Like be very aware that it is not durable, and you will probably not use anything that is ever related to your initial prototype. But something that you can kind of like put in front of people and just see if it can demonstrate a behavior change is a really, really good validation signal.
Yeah, even like doodling a prototype on paper and drawing it and asking people what they would click, like even something that low fidelity is amazing. Anytime I've ever done prototype testing, I've always been so happy we didn't just build it. And it makes you think in retrospect, really should have done a lot more. You avoid so many mistakes. And I'm circling back on some of the other stuff. I really love when people use PDFs and stuff. One of the best things I saw recently is somebody made like an online course where it's like the PDF is almost like the menu of this online course, and it just links to YouTube videos that are the course. And it's just like, eventually they'll probably productize it, make a web page, all these things, but they're literally just like, it's this document circling around, people are sharing in like this Google Doc. And it's like, you look at it, there's like 200 people on it in any given moment. You know, there's so many creative ways to validate, which is awesome. And Hannah had a question. One piece of advice for people interested in working in product in a startup: how do they get started? If anybody wants to answer that one, how do you get into product? I know it's like really a tricky one, and it of course it will depend, as all these answers are. But anyone have any advice or ideas on that?
So I guess there's a few routes. You know, of it's like creating your own startup, and then you have some experience to get into that. There's like the sidestep maneuver where maybe it doesn't even product as your first role. Maybe you're in there as a business analyst or something, and then you can hop in depending on the size. It depends on the size of the startup. So, you know, if you have a little bit easier to do, if it's now you're the first PM going into it, they might be a little more hesitant and want you to have experience beforehand, at least some kind of PM experience. So, or, you know, maybe you worked in consulting or some other field that kind of, you know, lends itself to product management, or you've come out of an MBA. I know that's another route where sometimes people also hop in. I mean, there's a number of different veins, so it depends on the size of the startup. The smaller one, you probably want to have experience first. If it's slightly larger and you can prove that you can actually, you know, learn the skills and develop them on the job, they might be a little more lenient to helping train you, you know, startups with 50 plus people. So it depends on the size of the company, but yeah, there's a number of different veins to get in, but no real, you know, it's not like there's a comp sci degree for, you know, product out there.
Yeah, I got into product the traditional way, which in my eyes is like, okay, I worked in a company in a different role, and then I started like learning some producty stuff and doing some producty stuff, and then eventually somebody was like, okay, fine, you can have this job. So I think that a lot of people get into it in that way, and it can be a really good way to, I guess, looking at it from a little bit of a larger startup really, but how I would look to hire a PM. You can either have somebody who has a lot of experience in the company and a lot of knowledge about the industry that maybe works internally and needs to learn some product skills, or you have someone that's a great product manager and you need to teach them company skills. And those are kind of two of the common ways that we see people moving into the role in Saskatchewan. So each of those is going to work for different people, but things to think about maybe.
Awesome.
And I'll maybe put the plug in, be community involved. Again, is I think that's mostly how I got into product management. Is to some degree, there's a like, be the person who's around and you show an interest in what you do, is a very compelling reason for someone to give you a shot at something. And you know, sometimes at the start when you're trying to build a career in a different area than where you are right now, sometimes that's what it takes, is someone giving you a shot. So be the person that you would want to give a shot to. So learn, study, get involved in the community. Definitely just like show and commit to interest.
Awesome. I think we're at time, but like a 30-second answer to this question that just came in from David. You know, early on you get a lot of feature requests. As far as like, yeah, getting back to the problem. I would say if you're getting a lot of feature requests, like try to define like, a lot of feature requests are things that are like delighters essentially. It's like, if you went into a room and there was like, if I woke up this morning and there was like a box of donuts on the table, I'd be super happy. But what really determines whether it's a delighter is how you would feel if the feature wasn't present. If I show up at my table and there's no box of donuts, I'm not sad because I didn't expect it. You know, so separating things that are more like oxygen, that are must-haves, where the absence of them is affecting the user, versus delighters where they might want it, but the absence of it won't actually prevent them from using your product to solve their problem. I'd focus on thinking at it in those terms.
Yeah, get to the why, understand why that they're asking for that thing. It's a great indication of interest, but like there's many solutions to one problem. Understand their problem. Sometimes what they're asking for is what it is. That's rarely the case, but if you understand the problem, then you can better understand how to start solving it.
Amazing. Okay, so that is time. I want to give you a heartfelt thank you. Thank you all so much for participating in this panel. I learned so much. The most important thing I'm taking away from this is that if there are not donuts in the cultivator office, every day when I arrive, I will be disappointed. So I'm going to throw that back to Dave Crossman, and that will be his responsibility. So David, Paul, Bob, or Robert, whatever you're flying with, and Allie, thank you so much from the team here at Cultivator and everybody in the audience. We are super happy to have you. We will have my trusty, I'm going to promote her to panelist, here to demote you here in a second, but you're free to turn off your cameras. Thank you again so much. Product 101, I'm sure you can reach out to any of these people on LinkedIn and they're happy to chat with you as well.